Hello, everyone, and welcome to How We Win $10 to $20 billion for affordable housing. Today, we will be going over the 2024 Regional Affordable Housing Bond Measure. This is a really exciting campaign that could be a breakthrough solution for addressing the Bay Area's housing crisis. My name is Angelina Cornejo, and I am the Campaign Strategy Coordinator at East Bay Housing Organizations. And I am here today with Courtney Powell, Policy Manager from RCD, Resources for Community Development.
So EBHO is a part of BAHA, which is the Bay Area Housing for All Coalition, and this is led by Enterprise and Nonprofit Housing. And EBHO, along with St. Mary's, shout out to Ruby holding it down in the chat. We are part of the Alameda County Leads. So this is just to give you an idea of who all is part of the Bay Area Housing for All Coalition. So why are we all here? Why did we all decide to work together? It's because we all know, we're all painfully aware of the fact that we are not building enough affordable housing in the Bay Area. And we are even more so underproducing affordable homes for low income and extremely low income households. So what does that mean? 14% of the 120,000 new affordable homes that we have needed each year have been produced. And over 161,000 Californians are currently homeless. Local government bonds are one of the most powerful affordable housing financing sources that are available. And we know that this is a regional issue, and we have all come together to think of regional solutions, including the regional bond. So BAFA, the Bay Area Housing Finance Authority, is poised to place a $10 to $20 billion 9-county regional housing bond measure on the November 2024 ballot. We know that we can solve this issue, and as a region, we can raise the scale of funding that we need to address the issue. So how did we get here? There was a lot of exploration that happened in 2018. BAFA came up with a report to basically explore and explain why the Bay Area needs funds for the 3Ps in order to coordinate funding. BAFA also took a New York City trip because New York has actually built a housing funding and finance infrastructure that Bay Area leaders could learn from. There was also like a 3Ps campaign to make sure that all 3Ps were included in the consideration for any sort of agency and how important it was to address the 3Ps. And then came AB 1487 in 2019 by Assemblymember Chu, who created BAFA as a new legal entity. And that was signed in 2019. And then in 2020 and 2021, after BAFA was established, there was a $20 million state appropriation. So the first bunch of money was given to BAFA. And this was all secured through the Bay Area Housing for All Coalition advocacy efforts that we are a part of. And then most recently, Kate Hartley was hired as the inaugural director, and as well as 5 housing staff. And this is when we began to talk about how regional agencies needed to vote to explore a housing measure in 2024. So let's talk a little bit more about AB 1487 and the parameters that were instilled by AB 1487. So how does BAFA operate? How does it raise money? And where does the money go? So how does BAFA raise money? The way that BAFA could raise money is through a parcel taxes, general obligation bonds, which is what we're talking about right now, head taxes, gross receipts, and commercial linkage fees. That's after there's a passage of a property-based revenue source. So that's how BAFA could get the money to do its work. Where would the money go? So the money is return to source, meaning that 80% of revenues distributed at the local level, 20% of the revenues will be distributed at a regional level. And if there were a head tax, then it would be split 50-50 between the counties and the region. There's also an element of it that includes local incentive grants. So that's for technical assistance for homeless shelters and homeless prevention, home ownership, and infrastructure. So that's how BAFA raises its money. Where does the money go? So there's also this sort of distribution that was set out by AB 1487 about how the region and counties need to distribute the money. So that's 52% to production, 15% to preservation, and 5% for protection. And then similarly for the county, 52% production, 15% preservation, and 5% protection. And then there's an amount of flexible money. So let's dig deeper on the requirements for the funds that are raised by any BAFA measure. So the county and city expenditures, this is what will be like the 80% that would be dispersed to the counties and the cities. What would it mean for production? So for production, rental or ownership is okay. Permanent supportive housing or interim homeless housing is allowed. And every income cap would be at 120% AMI. It must be deed restricted, must prioritize projects that help meet RHNA goals. For preservation, the income cap is also at 120 AMI, must also be deed restriction. And there's still the tenant protections that are prescribed in AB 1487, including legal services, rental assistance, relocation, and tenant education. Those are the restrictions and requirements for the county and city 3Ps approach. For BAFA, their own expenditures are allowed for rental only. Permanent supportive housing is okay. Interim housing might be a little bit more difficult for BAFA expenditures. Income cap at 80%. AMI for production, and then the deed restrictions are still there for 55 years. For preservation, it's the same 120% AMI as the county and city expenditures, and there's also a deed restriction for 55 years. So what is BAFA doing right now? So BAFA is doing a series of pilot programs. Doorway was one of the most recent pilot programs to connect residents to affordable housing opportunities. So this is a regional platform that has all the listings for affordable housing. I know a lot of people who are looking for housing are looking for any housing across regions. As it was before, it was difficult to get a regional listing of all the affordable housing units, and Doorway does that. It's actually pretty exciting. Along with Doorway, BAFA also has a pilot program for the affordable housing pipeline. So that would be a database to track the production and preservation of affordable homes, so we can have more information about which housing is in pre-production, which housing needs funding. So that BAFA is creating a database to track that. There's also preservation pilot programs offering financing and technical assistance to support and scale anti-displacement efforts. There's a pilot program about anti-displacement services to coordinate best practices and share effective program services regionally. And BAFA is also using some REAP 2.0 money for housing preservation. There's $15 million for an acquisition rehab program. There's a priority sites pilot, which was $28 million for affordable housing funding on public land or redevelopment of malls and office parks. And they also received $15 million for regional housing, technical assistance, and local grants. We highlighted here one of the first deals of the welfare tax exemption preservation program pilot that BAFA is doing. It was a 24-unit apartment building that Eden Housing is preserving. So that's exciting. So BAFA is doing a lot of things with the limited amount of funds that they do have currently. Now I will be passing it on to Courtney, who will share more about why the regional bond is a historic and exciting investment and what it would mean for affordable housing production and preservation. So take it away, Courtney.
Thanks so much, Angelina. So building on BAFA's current work, their next challenge is getting the funding to expand all of those impactful current programs, and also to move more into providing additional financing for affordable housing on a region-wide scale. So after doing a feasibility analysis and kind of considering the politics of all those options that Angelina showed a few slides back on that table of ways that they can generate revenue, BAFA has decided that the best way to move forward is to use a general obligation bond to bring in those new revenues. So I wanted to start by talking just about why this additional funding to both expand those existing programs and start financing additional projects is so important. And I can say that in the process of developing affordable housing, RCD's staff deal with all sorts of challenges. There are long and complex permitting processes that our project managers have to navigate. There is opposition from NIMBYs who don't want affordable housing in their neighborhoods. And then, of course, there are the actual technical challenges with site design and building construction that must be addressed with any type of production or preservation project. But the number one issue that I hear about from our development staff is the lack of consistent local funding for affordable housing. Obtaining local funding is key because it allows us to competitively seek other resources that we then cobble together to fund one affordable housing project. A $10 billion regional housing measure would allow projects to access over $38.1 billion from other funding sources. This would then facilitate the production and preservation of 45,000 homes across the Bay Area. More than 500,000 low-income households would be housed over the lifetime of those developments that would be funded through a $10 billion bond measure. And now 10 billion is the number that, I think is widely considered to be, a sweet spot to go for of, achievable, but not, like a stretch goal. And there's talk of potentially even increasing that to 20 billion if we're really able to rally a campaign together and generate the support that we need to get that across the finish line. Now, a $20 billion regional housing measure would double that impact. Just wow, that would be incredible and transformational for affordable housing in the Bay Area. So to put some of these numbers into context, thanks to recent investments of additional state funding, in particular in affordable housing, particularly HCD has a housing accelerator program. There's currently a lot of construction activity compared to recent memory of affordable homes in the Bay Area. BAFA's estimate is around 9,700 affordable homes currently under construction. Just to put that in context, the California Department of Housing and Community Development estimates that the number of affordable units issued building permits last year was 1.5 times the number of building permits issued in 2018. So this trend is headed in the right direction. But we all know that the current production and preservation is not occurring at the scale that we need in order to meet a very severe housing crisis that's having a disproportionate impact on the lowest income, most vulnerable renters in the Bay Area. Right now, there are over 32,944 affordable homes that are in pre-development around the Bay Area. So this means that they haven't started construction yet, but some of these projects are shovel ready, which means that they have permits and are ready for construction, other than securing just like one final financing source. Others may be just at the beginning of design and permitting, but all of these projects need additional funding in order to become a reality. So the map on the right-hand side of this slide shows the distribution of homes in pre-development across the Bay Area. And as you can see, there are homes in pre-development everywhere, in every single county, in every single community. The $10 billion housing bond offers the promise of additional resources to unlock this current pipeline. And it's something that will have an impact not only in our largest cities and in our most populated communities, but in every single corner of the entire Bay Area. And so, as Angelina mentioned, each county and a few cities will receive a portion of the money from the bond. And this slide shows the amount of money that each eligible jurisdiction would receive from either that $10 billion or $20 billion bond. And as you can see, my first thought is like, wow, those are some big numbers. And in particular, almost $1 billion to Alameda County and Contra Costa County really stands out to me. Just the scale of this funding to help these jurisdictions not only move their pipelines from pre-development to construction to providing the actual affordable homes, but also to fund additional protections work and to create innovative programs like the ones that BAFA already has to stabilize communities, prevent displacement, and ensure that everyone has a stable, affordable home. It's just completely transformative. Distributing the funding across jurisdictions in this way also will uplift local voices and issues, because counties and cities will retain control over the expenditure plans that they set. So they'll be able to determine their own priorities for awarding funding, as well as the specific projects and the specific communities that they may award funding to. And this will ensure that residents and communities continue to get a say in the types of projects funded and get to continue to set priorities for how their community will address the housing crisis in an equitable fashion. I'll also just emphasize one last time that distributing the funding in this way also ensures geographic equity. so that projects will be funded throughout the Bay Area, including in jurisdictions right now that may hide behind their responsibility to construct housing by saying that they don't have any local housing funding. Well, all of those, exclusionary jurisdictions will not have an excuse anymore for not being able to provide housing to allow people who work in those jurisdictions, people who have family in those jurisdictions, to stay and live and thrive in those jurisdictions. And that kind of geographic equity will be a huge component of this bond funding piece. But as excited as I am about the county and city expenditures, what I'm actually most excited about is the part of the allocation that goes directly to BAFA. And that is around $2 billion, with the $10 billion bond. And BAFA is planning to use this specific kind of regional bond allocation to build and scale solutions across all funding areas. So all 3 Ps: protection, preservation, and production. The lack of affordable housing is really a regional problem, and it'll be transformative to have BAFA as a well-funded agency who can step up and implement regional solutions. And they are really taking the opportunity to conceive of really innovative new programs that will benefit the entire region, and in particular, low-income tenants and communities that are hit the hardest by the affordable housing crisis. So BAFA will offer alternatives to traditional affordable housing financing structures that aim to deliver faster and more cost-effective housing through some of its production programs. So they will have an efficient delivery program that will specifically look at financing for permanent supportive housing projects, which typically require very deep subsidies. And this program will aim to create a better funding pathway for those developments, when those developments can have lower costs and target faster development timelines. In the efficient delivery program, the idea is that a development will go from conception to actual physical construction, people moving in under 3 years, which is just a completely fast timeline for what we can currently achieve with the kind of funding bottlenecks that exist in the state system. Another program will be an affordable unit buy-down program, and this will provide subsidies that pay the cost of adding affordable housing units to market rate developments. And make no mistake, these are affordable units beyond any type of inclusionary housing that a market rate developer would already have to provide. So this will, kind of speed up the process of getting units online and also create a more integrated housing ecosystem. And then finally, there's an adaptive reuse program. Adaptive reuse means converting buildings from commercial, think of like aging and obsolete malls or office parks or vacant retail buildings. We would convert those to affordable housing. And so this is a specific type of production that would add new units faster without kind of a lot of buildup costs in terms of like the site grading and all the kind of infrastructure needs that oftentimes comes with vacant sites. Additionally, BAFA will be making investments in existing residential buildings, and that will be to prevent displacement of low-income households and to stabilize communities. This includes both investments in what we call naturally affordable housing, which are housing units that aren't deed restricted, but are typically at affordable prices due sometimes to the condition of the unit or to the age of the unit, to the location of the unit, as well as older deed restricted affordable housing properties that are in need of rehabilitation work. And so BAFA will provide preservation, acquisition, and rehabilitation loans, which won't compete directly with new construction projects, which will make BAFA a critical source of funding for expanding preservation work throughout the Bay Area. Additionally, BAFA will invest in existing deed-restricted housing that's nearing its expiration date, helping extend the affordability of these properties and ensuring that they can complete rehabilitations to improve accessibility, modernize amenities, and stay pleasant places to live for the next 55 years. And finally, BAFA will invest in rehabilitation projects in small buildings, cooperatives, and new types of housing like limited equity housing to support community-driven housing models and wealth generation for low-income households. So it's a lot, obviously, but BAFA's intended work actually does not stop there. So I'm going to pass it back over to Angelina to talk more about BAFA's work around tenant protections And then hopefully you all are all excited at this point and interested in getting involved, and she'll be talking more about how exactly you can do that. So Angelina, back to you.
Thank you, Courtney. So I want to talk about what BAFA is doing in the realm of protection. So this is the framework of what BAFA is doing. So there are investments to ensure that residents can remain in their homes by facilitating regional collaboration, providing technical assistance to cities pursuing tenant protection strategies, and expanding prevention programs. And all of these investments will promote equity by supporting tenant-led advocacy and education. So BAFA is looking for creative ways to fulfill their AB 1487 mandated 5% of the revenue towards tenant protection programs. I know this is a question that has been brought up a lot about the GO bond money. As it stands today, we know that GO bond money must only be used for brick and mortar capital projects, but still BAFA can use other money that's appropriated and also recycle funds, such as those procured through the repayment of loans. And there also is a current exploration of legislative solutions, such as AB 1319, which is the AB 1487 cleanup bill. So there's some cleanup that is being done to the AB 1487, which established BAFA, to make it, to enable BAFA to take advantage of any expanded eligible uses that are provided by any pending state measure, which would expand allowable expenses to include a broader set of homelessness prevention services. There are tenant protection pilots that are being greenlit in recent ABAG meetings, such as a rental subsidy program for seniors and other vulnerable households at risk of homelessness. And that is actually being done by repurposing $5 million of funds that was previously used for land acquisition. So BAFA is thinking about creative ways to use their investments for protection. That's 5%. Another creative thing that BAFA has recently greenlit is a Bay Area eviction study that will soon analyze eviction data throughout the region to better understand the causes, the household characteristics, and other conditions of evictions, and help develop data-driven prevention strategies that are tailored specifically for the region. And with discussion that has been happening at the MTC ABAG meetings, BAFA aims to disperse $2 million towards tenant protections in the first bond issuance, if all the other things fall into place in the state and the cleanup bill and all that. And as you all know, ABHO continues to advocate for all 3 Ps, and we are closely tracking BAFA's implementations of tenant protections programs, and we will be calling for a more robust investment for tenant protections. So we hope that you are excited about this and help us in our efforts. And as Courtney mentioned a little bit earlier, every county and city is going to have an expenditure plan about how they will use that money. And we need all of us to advocate for the things that we're all passionate about, and all the 3 Ps get the love and the money and the piece of the pie that they deserve. And so that's why we are part of the Bay Area Housing for All Coalition. And I'm just going to speak a little bit about the campaign itself. So what are the goals of the campaign? The affordable housing goals of the campaign are to win a system change and unlock billions of dollars for affordable housing and homelessness solutions, so that we can get closer to housing, racial, and economic justice. We want to make sure that we build a Bay Area coalition that includes a range of sectors, partners, and interests, and that's everybody, right? We want to make sure that this unprecedented amount of money is taking into account all the different people who have a stake in affordable housing and in all the 3 Ps. And we want to make sure that the coalition is robust and that it's listening to the interests of the community. And we also want to invest in grassroots organizing across the region. We want to make sure that residents of affordable housing and also seniors or senior organizations like St. Mary's have a say in the bond and how it's spent. We want people to feel invested in this. We want to make sure that this is coming from the grassroots and that elected officials are hearing what the concerns of the community are. And we want to build towards a long-term housing agenda that centers racial equity and helps us win future ballot measures. So those are the goals of the Bay Area Housing for All campaign. So here's a timeline from now until it actually gets voted on. So as you know, time is our most valuable resource. We are talking about this more than a year from when it will be on the ballot. And why is that? It's because we want to make sure that this thing gets passed, right? So right now we are in the building capacity and feasibility part of the campaign. So this is where we are doing what we're doing now, which is establishing and telling the story to the community. We're doing community outreach and engagement and securing key endorsements. As it stands today, we have over 400 individual endorsements with 83 elected officials, 21 supervisors, 20 mayors, 40 city council members, and we're hoping to have at least 1,000 individual endorsements by the time the year ends. And that is to make sure that we are building this Big Tent coalition. The campaign ramp up will happen from June 2024 until the filing deadline in August 2024. The filing deadline just means that that's the last date you can put something on the ballot. So during the campaign ramp up, endorsements are going to continue. That's when the fundraising comes in, finalize the campaign team, start working out the field campaign. That's when a little bit of the voter outreach will be happening. In August, we're actually trying to get other people who might not be so tuned into housing issues. That's when we'll really be executing the campaign, meeting financial goals and deploying a campaign army strategically and deliberately. And that's also when we'll get a sense of how this is polling and what we need to do to make sure that it passes. Ballots mail on October 7th. Your everyday voter should know about this before their ballots mail. And then election day is November 5th, 2024. So this is sort of like a zoomed out version of where we are. As you can tell, we're very early on, but we are doing all these things because we want to make sure that we're in the best position to actually pass this investment. So I wanted to zoom in a little bit into phase one, which is the building capacity and feasibility, to let you know what the steps are until the resolution is placed on the ballot. These are the different decision points that are being made and discussed at the ABAG MTC meeting in September. BAFA will start talking about how to distribute its funds, talk about preservation program priorities, talk about local government incentive program priorities. In October 2023, there's going to be approval of initial funding priorities, the adoption of the business plan and equity framework, and talk about protection program priorities. And then in December 2023 is the adoption of the final BAFA business plan. And in January 2024, BAFA will start talking about their regional expenditure plan decision. So BAFA's portion of the bond, the approval of that will happen in May 2024. Also, the resolution to place it on the county ballots will be happening on May 2024. Once that happens, that's when we go for the campaign ramp up in June 2024. Nothing is set in stone yet. I want you to join the Baja Coalition, champion to your networks, help with fundraising and donating, and go on to our website, Bay Area Housing for All, to endorse. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate your excitement and enthusiasm for this bond. We're really excited about it. And if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us. It's on the slide here, Angelina Cornejo from EPHO, and my email is just angelina@epho.org. Or you could reach out to Courtney at cpal@rcdhousing.org. Thank you all, everyone.